Thank you all for coming. What a beautiful theater. Thank you, Lloyd, first of all. I mean, and the whole festival staff and the programming team. This is fantastic.
They just drove in. Okay, so Alex and Katie, where's Katie? They're still over here. They dropped off their son, freshman at University of Buffalo, so today was one of those days.
Dramatic day.
Drop off. Were there tears?
There were tears.
Yeah. Beth just did, right? Her oldest son on Wednesday. Yeah. So he was dropped off at Conn College. So it's been an emotional week, right? And also there's a lot of driving.
A lot of driving.
Socrates basically to Buffalo, and then Buffalo here.
Yes, a drive I hope to never make again. No offense.
I take no offense at it, but...
If I did ever again, it would be for you, Lloyd.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm very grateful they're here. But if either of them slumps in their chair, we'll do something. I don't know, CPR. We'll do something to revive them. Do you want coffee, by the way? I can't get it for you right now, but you can think about it for later.
I just had a double whiskey down at the tavern.
A double whiskey. And two brothers?
Two brothers.
Now you're seeing three brothers. Okay. As a result. I'm very happy to have them here. I mean, I think I said to you in the opening that with Peter Bradley won a new prize this year, the Swift House Prize for Best Depiction of the Arts. And And now that you've seen the picture, I think you understand why the folks who made that choice opted to select this picture. I mean, it is I don't know what you say, it is a ongoing conversation with the canvas and with you. There's no point in the film where he's really detached from making art. This is what he does every day. When this was finished, how old was he then? And now?
Peter he was turning 80, so I filmed him primarily between February and late June of 2020, which we all know was part of the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But because it was just the two of us, we took a break, but then felt pretty safe, just masking up.
Which would make him 83 now?
Yes, he's about to turn 83, I was just going to say.
And being rediscovered.
Yeah, in dramatic fashion, and shortly after I stopped filming him. It was, I believe, November of 2020 when he was first approached by Karma Gallery in New York. And then, oddly enough, Peter needed a lawyer at the same time for the contract from the art gallery and for me, because up until that, I filmed him for almost 2 years and there was no agreement in place, which Beth scolded me about. It was just based on trust, essentially. And then I was like, well, I want to be able to show this film. I need to,
You probably did need a contract for that, yes.
Yeah.
But the trust factor, talk about this, because you live next door to him or close by?
Well, close by, like a 5-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably 2 miles at the most.
Well, given that his personality is expressed in this film, was that something easy for you to, I mean, it's essentially a one-on-one conversation, so was it easy for you to sort of gain some trust, or it took a while?
Peter, from the first day, I don't know if any of you read the last title card, it sort of talks about how this all came about.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Langdon, a local art gallerist in Socrates, introduced us just after New Year's 2020. And the first day I went in, Robert's like, hey, Alex is a filmmaker, you might want to film you. And Peter's like, hey, you want to go get your camera?
Yeah.
It took a while before I got over there, because I had other things I was working on. But he, from the start, was just very trusting of me, very open. I think to a significant degree, well, number one, I was meeting the Peter Bradley who was 79, and not 29, 39, 49. When you get a sense, there was a tougher shell, shall we say. And I think in that softening of age and looking back, there was that. And then also it had been so long, I think, since anyone really cared, at least in the art world, so to speak, or certainly anyone from the media, was interested in what he was doing. So he was just happy to talk. And he was really there by himself. At that point, his wife, Deborah, who, by the way, everybody asked me, why is Deborah, his wife, not in the film? So that first day I went up, well, probably the first day I came with the camera, she was there and she's like, this is so great. Peter, you guys just go do your thing. I do not want to be in this. Whatever you do, just leave me out. And I said, okay. And there was even a late, because she would come out from time to time, Peter would be piddling around the garden, and Deborah would come out, or the cat, and I'd grab shots. And in a late rough cut, I tried to sneak in a shot.
That didn't work.
Of Deborah, yeah, and she saw it, and she was like, no, get that out.
What did you think of the personal history that he reveals? The story of his mother, and then subsequent, and she had a profound influence on him, it seemed to me. And then also, he started out, his career in New York was so promising in so many ways. I mean, he was an anomaly as a black man in a white world, but then things sort of just came apart. And so, in hearing him talk now about the degree of racism that was involved in this world and sort of how he managed to maintain, even though he knew it was all around him constantly. But how did you feel about that, listening to this? You feel like this was history that was being told to you, really?
Well, I initially was drawn in to, Robert Langdon had given me sort of the bullet points of Peter's bio, and then was telling me, yeah, and he's been sitting here for 30 years and he's like been forgotten. And so I just thought, well, that's ridiculous. Someone needs to record a story. I'll just do it, if he's open to it. Because it seemed crazy. I mean, learning what you learn in the film, which really, is just sort of the primer on the Peter Bradley history. It's pretty remarkable, especially given what he achieved at such by the age of 35. I'm inquisitive, I like listening to people, I like asking questions, and there was nothing Peter wouldn't answer. And we just slowly, I think I sat him down 20 times, and we would just go through things, or I'd come back to things and ask him to fill in the blanks, the little gaps. It was particularly once I realized it was only going to be Peter and no one else in the film, which was the biggest creative decision I made, I suppose. He would just talk about anything, or if he just couldn't, he was like, I don't know what to say, he would just tell me, I don't know how to answer that, and I would move on. And he in a way, he treaded lightly, I think, on the race issue. The nice thing about Peter, what makes him sympathetic, I think, as a protagonist per se, is that he doesn't come across as a bitter old man. He still has this real warm sense of humor, and in looking back on this, it's more in like his expressions, the look in his face. I hold a few times after he'll say something, and you read it on his face, and that says so much more than what he might go into. I mean, sure, he called out particular people for being racist, but I didn't put that in. I didn't feel like it needed to be in the story.
He also uses the expression, and that's it, to end something, right? I mean, he would say that several times in the film. He would give a description, and he'd say, that's it.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
And, which is to say, I thought, my impression of the film is that I could talk more about it, but I really don't have to. I've already got it. That's it. And I found that endearing in a way. The story of his mother's 27-room house.
Yeah. I don't know if that's exaggerated or not. I do know it was the former boarding house of that rail line. I can't remember which one.
Built by the railroad?
Yeah. So it was a big house on the hill, built to house workers for the railroad. So it may have had 27 rooms. I'm not going to question it. I mean, I know there were a lot of kids in there at any given time, the foster kids, and his mother. It seems, by the way, that Edith Bradley was the go-to person for sort of the, child services, I guess, for that county.
Yeah.
If there were any kids of color that came in, they were like, Edith, you want to take, you got room for more? Yeah. And so she became, in a way, the dormitory for all those kids. And according to Peter, really, gave them a lot of love. I'm sure there could have been worse environments for them. And I guess they had each other. But I kind of wandered off of the question.
Well, why don't we talk to our consulting producer?
Yes, let's do that.
Share with us the nature of the consulting that took place on this film between you and Alex.
Yeah, I just want to give total props to Alex, because Alex directed, produced, shot, edited, and did all the archival research himself.
Wow.
So, So I guess, and also just to say, Alex and I, we worked together over 20 years ago for the first time, and we used to work together on a show called Egg the Art Show. And it was this national PBS show on the arts. We did short segments about artists, and I think I was the story editor, and Alex was one of our producer, director, editors. And so Alex has been filming artists and process and all that stuff for a long time. So I guess, and then Alex shot my first film, Lemon. So you, well, you co-DP'd it, yeah. So I guess like you came to me maybe in like 2020 when you were in process and we're just trying to figure it out, and there were some complexities to the storytelling and to the approach, and so we were sort of talking for a while and about all kinds of things, and then I sort of went away for a while, and Alex went deep in, and then when Alex started getting closer to finishing, we started talking a lot about how to get the film into the world, and what the distribution options could be, and what Alex needed to think about in order for the film to be ready. So I think I was around in the early days and less in the middle, and now much more kind of now in the end. And the other consulting producers, this woman Diane, and we used to work together at HBO with Alex. So it's like there's a lot of interconnection.
But when Beth saw the film, A Rough Cut, because I was working by myself, but I have a lot of smart friends that have worked in film and television. Some of them are actually editors, other people I just trust their opinion, and I would show them things as I went along, getting feedback and working on it, making lists, going back and asking Peter things where people felt things were missing, and then, but there was a hierarchy, there were certain people that were higher up. I wanted to wait. I want to wait till it's better to show it, to certain people. And it was actually after Amy had watched it, I waited to show it to our friend Amy Schatz, who's a director, done lots of doc stuff. She's great. And she said, I think you should show this to Beth. And I said, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And so when Beth responded to it really positively, then I knew, I was like, oh, I think maybe I've really got a film here. And I think I started to think about it more seriously. So it was very meaningful for me.
Has Peter enjoyed the film?
Peter's like the biggest fan. Yeah, Peter, I love Peter. Some people you just get along with. I mean, just from day one. I mean, I guess you feel it in the film, It was kind of our little buddy picture to me. And he's just, he's always so happy to see me. If it goes a few weeks, I haven't seen him, I'm like, I'll call him. Now he has an assistant. Things have changed a lot for Peter, for the better. It's so great. You got to see some of his new clothes, man. He's styling. He has the gallery helped him build a larger studio. He has a full-time assistant, like 4 days a week. He has an assistant. And he's been prolific as hell, painting huge, beautiful canvases. And I just go over there and just visit, And what's funny is that, so I guess he's seen the film projected twice. And he watched early Rough Cut and loved it, He's loved every version of it he's ever seen. But what occurred to me, it's sad, but it's sweet in a way, with the cognitive decline that is mentioned in the film, it's really his short-term memory, that gets to be very problematic. And of course, those things don't get better. But the long-term memory is still quite good. And in the moment, he's terrific to be with. But I'm starting to think that each time he sees the film, he's kind of seeing it for the first time. And he's always so happy. He's like, oh, you just did a great job. It becomes more meaningful to me each time, that he reacts. And one little sidebar is that when I showed a work in progress, in the summer of 2022, it was like 15 minutes longer than this, I was able to project it in our local theater and had a bunch of people, maybe about this many friends came, and Peter was there, and he sat next to our friend Penny Falk, who's a great editor, and she told me Peter was crying, as he was watching some of it. I think the moments with his mom, and the mother, the relationship with the mother, getting back to what you're saying, I think is really the heart of of his story. I mean, his mom was so responsible, well, the sense of fashion, the work ethic, the, fuck everybody, who cares what they think. I mean, who Peter is, in large part, just goes back to these, themes with his mom. I mean, I wish I could have met her. She must have been something else.
It seems that his experience in meeting, by the way, the situation about Miles Davis being his father, okay, that was humorous to me. Miles Davis has a lot of children out there. But it was very, very humorous to me. And all these others, great jazz musicians who came and stayed there. What a marvelous opportunity, right? And so, I mean, the direct connection between that part of childhood and then he lives with jazz right now, every day. The way he scored it is great, but I'm assuming that's the soundtrack of his life. So, did he suggest to you, that you should have, Miles and Coltrane and others that, were essential that he wanted in the film?
Well, thank you for getting back to the soundtrack. Major props to Javon Jackson, who composed this, and a quintet he put together, recorded it. I was fortunate enough to be there in the studio when they just recorded it live, the 5 guys, they would just record it. And I watched on my laptop to see if it was timing out right, and did it very quickly, less than 2 full days. And the score he did was based on, so let me back up. Javon has known Peter since the late 80s. Javon came out of Berklee School of Music, and his first job was for Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And so Peter, being friends with Art and going to see every show, at least in the city he could, met Javon as like, a 20-year-old kid who was, just that good that he was with the band. And what Javon told me is really telling. He said, first of all, he didn't know anything about Peter as an artist because they never talked, all they talked about was music all those years. He didn't even know Peter was really an artist. He was just one of Art's friends that was into the music. So that says a lot. And then when he saw the film, he realized that the way Peter speaks and the kind of turns of phrases and the whole kind of vibe it's really what he learned from these jazz cats as a kid, like the way to conduct yourself and that kind of attitude. So that was a revelation for Javon when he was watching the film, He did a fantastic job emulating, so that the temporary score, I grabbed all these CDs that Peter had lying around the studio. You see a shot of them on the shelf. I just grabbed a bunch. And then, I don't really know jazz in any particular way, but I know it sounds right behind the scene, and picked all these, the canon, all these Miles CDs, Coltrane, Mingus, that was amazing. And that was the temporary score I used while I was editing. So Javon listened to that, and we talked about it, spotted, and he's like, okay, I got this. And then I never heard any demos or anything. He's just like, I got this. You'll hear it when we record it. So I was anxious, but boy, he hit it out of the park. It's amazing.
So let me understand. So all the music that we have here is a recording of great jazz pieces by Javon, or he has original music in addition.
There's what we call the source music. Okay. So when Peter's painting and he put on records, those are the records he's listening to, which we're hoping we have a fair use legal path to use those.
We hope you do too.
It was part of the reality of what he was doing. I wasn't putting on records to, so those are all things he's listening to. Sometimes you would see actually the CDs, but all the rest of it is scored music.
It's elegant.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's really. There's a soundtrack, a Javon self-released soundtrack album. It's on Spotify. If you just search with Peter Bradley. And it's gotten great reviews, Downbeat magazine. Just as a record, it's gotten a lot of great reviews. So
let's go back to you, Beth. So you're seeing, when you see the cut, or what you consider close to the finished cut, what was your reaction? Comments back to Alex at that point? Can you share that with us? Without, trade secrets being given away?
Yeah, I remember thinking that it was really amazing. There was such intimacy, they had such a connection. It is kind of like a buddy movie. I didn't know anything about Peter. I thought that Alex filmed it really beautifully. I think the only comments probably were that it was like in the early days a little long, and how do you open it, right? Like that's always like the big question, but it was just it was so clearly there and its own thing, and clearly such an expression of their relationship, and also Alex's ability to capture that and Peter's process. And so, yeah, I thought, we had gone out for drinks at some point, and Alex mentioned I'm making a film about a guy who lives down the street. I don't know, so I was like, oh my God, this is it, So I was really excited for him.
But, shooting it was all the fun and games, and then the work editing, there were 18 cuts up to what I considered the fine cut.
18.
And then there were 5 to 8 iterations of a fine cut. And actually and figuring out the beginning and the end was always the thing I really struggled with, how to build from and then build your way out. A lot of moving things around. It takes a long time.
I think what you're showing here is beautiful. I mean, you accomplished this.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to go to the audience. Does anybody want to ask a question of the director? Yes, go ahead.
Did you by any chance have in mind Hans Amos' film of Jackson Pollock painting?
No, because I haven't seen it.
Can you repeat the question?
If I had in mind in making this film about Pollock, do you know what year it would have been made?
Early in the 50s, I
Yeah.
think. At the moment, maybe 56.
I mean, I'm sure I've seen clips of some of that.
Just because of the pouring and the outdoor canvas on the ground, and also in a remote location.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Right. Was he on
I need to watch more
the
movies.
way out in the Hamptons or somewhere like that? Who else? Question? Yes. Or are you just stretching?
No,
Question?
very enjoyable, thank you. Many films that I see about artists have some context of academics or writers or contemporary artists, and you made the choice to not have any of that.
How'd you like that?
You're really down deep in the weeds with Peter, period, so you're not lifted out of it by talking to some art critic or something like that. So I liked it, but I was curious about it because I don't see, most of the films with artists that I see do have that sort of context thrown in there. What was your choice? Why did you do that?
There's a journalistic expectation, which I get. And well, look, listen, when I first started filming Peter before the COVID lockdown, I was thinking, yeah, I'll get, and then I'll get people that can talk about it. Yeah. And then that was completely off the table. I couldn't even get people to answer my emails. There's an incredible book, if any of you are really into this stuff on a deeper level, it's called 1971, The Year in Color, by Darby English, University of Chicago Press. Wrote this amazing book. Half of the book is about the 1971 Whitney show, and the other half is about the Deluxe show, and talking about how there was this trajectory of sort of exhibition of black art in these radically different modes. And Peter figures prominently in that. And Robert Langdon had given me his copy of the book. And I kind of wrote to Darby like 4 times, and he would not write back to me. Because I thought if there's one guy, this is the guy that can talk about him. And it just wasn't in the cards. And then during that for 6 weeks, mid-March to the beginning of May, when we were all afraid to go out of our houses, we didn't know if we were going to die or what. Thank God I had like 20 hours with Peter, and I would just go out. I've got a little studio shed in the backyard, and I was just watching him. And there was a lot of interviews at that point because it was the winter, and wrapping my head around it and realizing maybe the best thing about this is just this world, this super contained little world. And then at a certain point, I couldn't even see how you cut away from that. How do you cut away from that to a talking head and then come back? It seemed pointless. So I just hope that Peter could tell his own story. I mean, sure, there's a lot of gaps. People could do other research.
Yes, but I mean, your explanation of this is very cogent. The fact was that COVID got in the way of doing the talking heads, the additional, the historians, the other artists and all this. So by the time you could maybe even delve into that again. Why? Why bother at that point? You had your story.
Yeah.
That's very good.
The other thing was sort of the success beat, which I had thought, Peter had his first solo exhibition in October of '21. And I thought, oh, this could be great. Maybe a little coda, a fun end credit thing. People will be there saying, oh, I love Peter, his art's amazing. And unfortunately, I was not granted access to film that.
Wow.
Which
That's too bad.
Which was too bad, but you know, it was okay. Like I got that in a way, and I didn't want what's lovely about this to me, and what I was happy with up until, you know, I'm still happy with, is the purity of an artist making art for art's sake. There's no commodification of anything in this story world, and I think that's really nice. And to maybe tease that in, it would just sort of change it. I didn't know if I could tell that story well anyway. But
Anybody else with questions? Yes. Yes. Second deck.
Okay, so just wondering, why was it that Peter's art was not touched for about 30 years, notwithstanding this exceptional talent?
well, he alludes to it a little bit toward the end. There's all this lovely string of pictures, which courtesy of Karma Gallery, thank you very much. Pictures from 1973. And he's talking about how after his last show, that the whole color field scene just sort of fell out of favor in the art market. Starting by the late 70s and certainly by the mid 80s, just people were into other stuff, you know. And so none of those guys, except the A-list guys like Kenneth Noland, Olitsky, you know, they still kept their galleries and were selling stuff. But the middling people, you know, that weren't big names, that just wasn't selling. And then you get the sense that Peter could have been his own worst enemy professionally, right? I mean, he doesn't want to take shit. He doesn't want to kiss anyone's ass. I mean, he talks about it. So certainly a degree of that. And then, of course, just, you know, straight up racism limiting his opportunities to reach the marketplace at all. And drug use doesn't help.
Anybody else? Yes?
I was just wondering if you had talked to Larry Poons or seen the short film about him, because there was a lot in this film that reminded me of his situation, though he has more contact, not much, in the art world.
No, I haven't been in touch with Larry. I'd love to meet him. In fact, Larry, well, Peter, he says it, you know, Larry was one of the few guys, Noland, Poons, like, it was all cool, you know. Larry, he actually talks, it's not in the film, but he and Poons shared the same psychiatrist for a while. And then he told me that it turned out this psychiatrist was practicing some type of psychiatry that was proved to be some total sham, you know. But they said it helped him, you know, so it's fun.
We'll take one more question. Go ahead, Kate.
Well, first off, I love this film. I mean, I love the intimacy and how you really allowed Peter to explore this process and life. You know, it's the study of how to live life in so many ways that I just love. I have a question though about the soundtrack, because I'm thinking, wow, all this great music. How'd you get all the, you know, how did you get access to using it in the film? So I'm kind of curious about the fair use issue.
Yeah, I am too. I've got a very good lawyer. Well, as I was sort of mentioning earlier, while Peter's painting and putting on his CDs, and you know, because he has to have his music to paint, I wasn't telling him what to put on. In those moments where it's the visual and the sound are really what was happening there, that's considered fair use. Or where he's talking, he's holding up, I'm listening to John Coltrane, and there's the CD, you know. That's okay. What I can't do is overlap that music onto a scene that happens after it, so it kind of begins and ends abruptly. And then all the rest of the music, where he's not painting, is all the original score. You know.
Well, please thank Alex Rappoport.
Thank you, guys.
First of all, for getting here, and secondly, for showing us an absolutely beautiful documentary film. A couple of housekeeping notes. So right now,